Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Doing What Matters podcast. I am your host, Teresa McCloy, and I am thrilled to have you back today as a listener to the podcast. On this podcast, we explore practical strategies and insights that'll help you navigate the challenges of daily life and daily work, all while staying focused on what truly matters. And we love to share stories with you about how others are doing that and how I am doing that in my own life. And believe me, it's a challenge each and every day to really stay focused on what matters. So I want to walk along with you, invite you into the conversation and into the room as we talk about these things. And today I am actually was invited into this episode by a story that was actually shared by one of our REALIFE Process certified coaches. As many of you know, if you listen to the podcast, we have people that have been certified to use our content, our process, our life management process, the REALIFE process in the work that they're doing. And Annette Bechtold actually shared something yesterday on a call we were on, one of our certified coaches, about how she's using a certain part of the process. And it just really struck me. I forget sometimes just the impact of the process as I've been doing it for such a long time. Annette was actually a guest on the podcast just a few episodes back, if you want to hear more about her story. But I just kind of want to share with you as we kick off today in this conversation, what she shared, and then we're going to unpack it a little bit and explore it. So what she shared, she works a lot in mid-level management coaching with teams. It can be in the ministry space or in the workspace. She has all different kinds of clients. But something she shared is how powerful the second component is of what we often call real life action. The component where we actually get up on the balcony of an idea or a project that we need to work on, something that's like a big piece. It's going to have a lot of actionable steps to it, and how we break that down. And she was just sharing, it doesn't matter if she's worked with a CEO, with mid-level management, with someone one-to-one. In all of those places, she was sharing the impact that this particular component has for people when they can really begin to break it down into actionable steps. So I want to talk about that today with you and get you to be thinking how you break things down. So this is our second component where we talk about real life action. But let's also talk about, in this second component, is where we really dive in deep to the Mindmap tool. Now, I have had people tell me when they've read through my book that came out last year, Do What Matters, Live From Rest Not Rush. Yes, you can find that on Amazon. You can find it at all of your local online bookstores and all of that. But one of the things that people often share with me is how much the Mindmap tool has been helpful for them. So first, let's talk about embracing this shift in perspective, because in component number 2, which is the action component, we really start to introduce the idea in this component of shifting from setting traditional goals, which many of you are used to doing. As you're listening in, you may even already have a list of goals that you're working on for this year, to working on projects instead and using a different language and terminology about projects. I've talked about that for years here on the podcast of why I like the word project better. And then we're going to introduce the twist of the process of mind mapping into the perspective shift. So exploring a question that I want to kind of introduce to you today. You might want to grab a piece of paper and write this down, but how does shifting the perspective from goals to projects and that language, along with the mind mapping tool, impact not only how you think about goals, but how you feel about them, and then how you move into action. Those 3 centers of intelligence that I talked about all the time through the lens of the Enneagram, that thoughts, feelings, and actions connection. So how does the perspective shift for you when you think about goals versus projects? I know for me, when I first had this aha of I don't have to call it a goal, I can call it a project. That was the thought. I can call my goals a project. I can give them a different language. The freedom, the weight that I felt off my chest of, gosh, I'm not going to fail at this. This is a project, and I'm going to take small steps towards that project. And each action step over time, that consistency is really what drives me forward and what makes me feel like I'm getting somewhere, even on days where I think I don't. Now, as Annette was sharing just the other day on a call about one of her CEOs that was just mind blown by the idea of a mind map and getting it all out of their head into this circle in the middle with the name of the project, and then starting to just dump it all out into the little circles all around. And then from there, deciding if there were projects within the project or if these were all just actionable steps. So mind mapping, that's kind of what we're talking about here, really is an incredible tool for visualizing your ideas and then beginning to connect the dots between all the different aspects of your project, because there might be a project within the project. When we start mind mapping, we're breaking it down into those smaller actionable steps and connecting in ways that mirrors how we actually think anyway. This is how we work. But when we just have it all jumbled up in our head, that's how it can feel, is very much jumbled in our head. The process not only makes the project seem more approachable. So it's like, oh, well, I can do that. I can make that phone call today. I can send that email. I only need to do this one thing or 2 things or 3 things this week to keep this project moving forward. But first, we have to pre-decide those things. That's a word I often use. But this project seems like it's more approachable, and it encourages your creative thinking and understanding of all the intricacies of the project. So you can get it all out, well, as much as possible. I always feel like I can capture about 90%. I might miss a few little things, but if I keep breaking it down and breaking it down, I can get there. So let's go back to this thoughts, feelings, and actions. The act of just mind mapping out the project prompts us to engage at a deeper level. It really gets down into our brain. We're no longer just looking at it as that far off goal, which was often my project. My problem was seeing the goal way out there. Instead, we're immersing ourselves and seeing the whole journey of the project. All the actionable things we need to do, all the relationships between the steps and what we might encounter, what challenges. We write something down in one of the little outside bubbles and we go, oh yes. And then there's this and this and this that go with that bubble. We can begin to see that one project is way more than they thought it would be, or than we imagined, and what is actually doable in that 90 days. What could we accomplish in the next 90 days of one of those bubbles or those subsets of bubbles? This perspective shift from just being this broad goal that we had, a dream, so to speak. I often think that goals are more like dreams. And we really get into that dream mindset in our first component of the real life process. We call that real life being, where we're looking at our big areas of focus. And then we're writing out kind of our dream statement. I am doing this in the next 2 to 3 years in that area of my life. But that's just a dream. We now have to break it down into actionable projects. And you kind of get an excitement as you're doing that. You could almost feel yourself doing the project. So we get a new level of clarity around it, and we get a more comprehensive view. Now we can start to prioritize those steps, which also gives us a new feeling of confidence. It influences our feelings and really says, wow, our brain begins to say, I'm capable of doing this. Now, many times when I'm breaking these down, I am the practical girl all the time. And so as you're listening, I want you to be thinking, how would you capture this? Are you someone that would write it on a giant whiteboard? Would you use the giant Post-its, which are one of my favorite tools? Do you work it out on a piece of paper? I encourage you to not jump too quickly into your task management software, but actually use a pen, a paper, a marker to write out some of these things, because that feeling in your body transfers from your mind to your heart space, from your hand back up to your heart to your body. When we're equipped with a well thought out, dreamed out feeling mind map that outlines all the projects and steps, we're much more likely to take the action because we know exactly what needs to be done. So that kind of dove us into this question, as if you were listening, to this feeling of how does the perspective shift from talking about a goal, which feels like a big dream, to a project in your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And I think that's what Annette was referring to actually when she talked about how this was just a light bulb for so many of her clients to say, wow, this is a shift for me. I feel it in my body. So now let's look at the second part. The shift from goals to projects becomes even more transformative when we put it with a mind map, because it's much more of a holistic and actionable way. That visual part is so important. We're actually kind of almost writing out a blueprint. And this blueprint connects both our creativity and our sense of purpose and motivation. So shifting that perspective of using the mind map also gets us into the present. We're no longer like out there on some faraway goal. Instead, we're invested right here, right now. This is a project that I'm going to move forward with. And that process, that continual adjustment and implementing that gives us a lot of insight. So as we're implementing and taking the next action and the next action, we get a lot more insight rather than it just being a goal way out there. Much fuller, much richer journey. So let me take a pause right there. We've talked about the mind map, how much just that tool is going to help you. We've talked about the shift in the language of goals to more project, getting it more current, more in the current reality. And then how that current reality and those actionable steps are really going to lead you to going, oh, this is the 1, 2, or 3 things I need to do this week. Now, when we use the REALIFE Process tool, and when you use the tool, you will find that once you have those actionable steps for the next 90 days, you can do 1, 2, or 3 things every week that's going to move you towards the project. Now, I recommend, if you want to dive deeper in this, pick up a copy of the book, read through this chapter on REALIFE Action. But let's move to another question. And it was something I mentioned just a bit ago of what does pre-deciding those action steps make possible for you? Because when we pre-decide those things, we wrote them down, we mind map them out, We have our list of what one we need to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth, maybe 10 to 15 actionable steps over the next 90 days. We have pre-decided and we've got a roadmap now. It's like pulling out your GPS and knowing where you're headed and the stops that you're going to have along the way. This helps so much to eliminate decision fatigue because you've already decided. There are enough decisions to be made in a day. I know you would agree with me that we don't need to make any more than we have to because life is going to happen and we're going to have other decisions that we need to make. I'm going to be really transparent with you as I'm thinking about this. So we have been in a remodel project since Easter, and I am recording this right at the end of August. So almost 4 months that we have been remodeling a master bedroom suite, which really has affected our whole entire home. It's affected my garage, my ability to park in the garage, all of those things. Now, because I have so many little decisions that I'm making as we're doing this remodel project, and when you do a remodel, it's different than building a new home. You've got to kind of deal with the space that you have, and it's going to be beautiful and it's lovely, and we're kind of halfway moved back in right now. But all of those decisions are causing a lot of decision fatigue. So because my business is already mapped out in projects and the remodel is one big personal project, I can really come into my workspace at my office. I work out of a co-working space and I can move in to something that is calm and clear, and I can go right to work on projects because I have them pre-decided and mapped out. And that's how our team works together, but that's how you can work individually as well. Control what you can control. Leave the rest into God's hands, but control what you can control. Pre-decide as much as you can. When you come in then to your project block time on your calendar, you know what you need to tackle. You can stay focused, and it really helps to overcome that procrastination. So something as simple as pre-deciding out your action steps can have a significant impact on your, what we call productivity. I don't love that word, but on how we move forward, what we get done, and just how we feel overall in our well-being. It affects that heart space so much. So pre-decide as much as you can around the projects that you can control, around, those things. And then if you have 1, 2, 3 projects in the next 90 days, pre-decide those things as much as you can going into fall. And then other things like the chaos of a remodel or something else that might come up that we weren't expecting, you can use up the brain energy, the decision energy on those things in your everyday, ordinary life. So we have talked about, let's just keep reviewing where we're at. We've talked about goals versus project language. We've talked about how working with goals and mind maps can affect our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. We've talked about the importance of pre-deciding those action steps and why that will help so much shift our perspective. So as we kind of wrap up this episode today, I want to encourage you to embrace the shift from goals to projects. I want to encourage you to embrace pre-deciding and action steps. Try it out this fall with one project and see what difference it makes. Consider that the projects that are meaningful to you, and find one that is super important to you and break it down into those actionable steps. Do the whole process. Again, you can read about it on the book. You can find it on Kindle, all the places if you just want to dive right in and read through everything and get some of the free resources as well that are listed there in the back of the book. Not only will this help you make that progress towards this one big thing, but it'll give you a sense of true accomplishment, doing what matters along the way. So as we come to the end of this, remember that shifting from those goals to projects and embracing the power of mind mapping and pre-deciding can be a game changer for you, both personally and professionally. You're focusing on the journey, you're organizing your thoughts visually, you're taking some really intentional steps, and you'll find yourself better equipped to navigate with clarity and with purpose. Going back to the story that I shared with you at the beginning from Annette and the results that her clients that she's coaching with, either in teams or one-to-one, are getting. She just couldn't say enough about this real life action step and what a shift it had been for her clients. So as we wrap up, I want to invite you to some exciting things that I have for you. If you're ready to take some next steps with the real life process, we have a couple of resources. If you're listening in and you're saying, how do I get more resources? Well, number one, I've talked a couple of times about downloading the Kindle version or purchasing the book, Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush. All the resources that I've talked about today are inside of that book. And there's download in the back of the book where you can get even more resources and some of our guidebook pages and all of that to work in if you need them. But if you're curious to learn more about what are the driving forces behind you taking action, what are the things that you need in your life, and why do you do the things that you do? Why do you value certain things? You might want to hop on over to our website at therealifeprocess.com, and we'll have that link in the show notes, but it's really easy, therealifeprocess.com. We spell real life with one L, so REALIFE, therealifeprocess.com. Hop on over there and grab the complimentary needs and values intro assessment that is there, or also another download that we have on time management and things to add into your life, get out of your life, those types of things. But for those of you who might be listening in and you would be passionate about guiding others on this journey, then also go to that page and download our Real Life Coach certification information. Maybe what you're feeling today is, I would love to help other people walk through this process, just like Annette is doing, like I am doing, like so many of our certified coaches are doing. They've not only done the work for themselves, but now they've said, oh, I want to go out and share this with others. You can find out more information about how to do that by downloading our certification information form. And just so you know, we have a new fall training cohort that will start for certification on October 16th. So if you're listening in real time, that's kicking off. It's a 6-week training that we do. It'll start on October the 16th. So you can access all of these different things that I've talked about at therealifeprocess.com, and keep embracing that intentional living that you're leaning into. You wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you weren't leaning into intentional living. Keep mind mapping your action steps and doing what truly matters. And if you found this episode valuable, please subscribe. That is just such a high compliment to us. And if you want to go out and leave a review, we would love that as well. We read all of them. We love them. Or share this episode with someone. If you've had a conversation last week or two with someone who was having trouble, like just getting a little further down the road, this might be a great episode to share with them. And stay tuned, because on our next episode of Doing What Matters, we're going to dive in again to another story, another way of really living your life from rest, not rush. I want you to hang tight, though, as we finish up today, because Lindsay Sturkey, our executive director of another one of our tools, One Life Maps, is going to share some great news with you about an upcoming training we have with the One Life Maps tool. So stay tuned in. Don't drop off. You'll want to know about the One Life Maps training. And remember that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. We'll be back next week with more from Doing What Matters podcast. See you soon.
Hey everyone, this is Lindsay Sturkey, and I am the Executive Director of One Life Maps here at the Real Life Process. And I'm so excited to invite you to join us in person in Effingham, Illinois on Thursday, September 21st from 8:30 in the morning until 4 p.m. And we are doing a training on how to guide others through Listen to My Life, through the tools of One Life Maps. So if you are someone who has been through the maps yourself and you want to use those tools with others, whether that's as a coach, a spiritual director, or a ministry leader, we want you to join us for this time of training to learn to help others recognize and respond to God in their story. That's what the tools of the maps are all about. We look at our past, where we've been, where we are now, and what God is inviting us to next. And so we want to equip you with resources and teaching and training and ideas of how you can use these tools in your work with others. So we're going to do things like have listening groups where we talk with each other about the tools of the maps and brainstorm together how we might use them. We're going to give you ideas and resources for how to use the maps in different contexts, such as one-to-one or group coaching, maybe in a workshop, a retreat, or other settings you might use those in. We're going to talk about how you could use these maps individually or as a whole if you go through the whole portfolio, or maybe even use them aside other content or tools that you use in your work or ministry. And we really want to equip you with some practical ideas of how you can use these tools with others. We believe in the power of these tools and have seen how they can help you grow personally, and also what might be possible as you use these in your work with others. So if you want to join us, register today. You can go to the link in the show notes. You can go to thereallifeprocess.com/onelifemaps and find all the information and details. Again, it's Thursday, September 21st in Effingham, and I hope that we'll see you there.